Algebra guys, this is the next part of the study guide. I'm going to go quickly through this. This says find the value of c, find c that makes this x squared plus 10x plus c that makes this a perfect square. So c has to be equal to something to make this trinomial a perfect square. And remember, c is equal to b divided by 2 and then square that whole value, right? And so really all we're doing is plugging and chugging. Where's b? Sir, where's b? Well, c is here. And if we go backward, this must be A, and this must be B. And it's just that coefficient in front of the x term. A is a coefficient in front of the x squared term. We'll get to that later. And then C is the constant. All right, so let's go ahead and fill in the blanks. And we've got 10, because there's no negative in front of it, divided by 2. And we're going to square it. All right. Well, 10 divided by 2 is 5, so 5 squared is 25. So C equals 5 squared, which is 25. Sorry about that 5 over there. It looks really ugly. But now that we know that C is 25, we have our whole value there. We'll say that it's x squared plus 10x, and we'll put our c into it of 25. Okay, let's move on. Let's say find the exact solution using the quadratic formula. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to block this off from any intrusion from above. But I want to talk about these things that are up here because I need my A, B, and C. I need this for reference, okay? So we're given a function, we're given a quadratic function. It says, actually we're given a quadratic that says x squared minus 3x plus 1 is 0. And the quadratic formula is as follows. Negative b. I give this to you on the test, by the way. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I can say it fast because, well, that's what I do. But I give this to you on the test so you don't have to worry about it. Now, remember, in front of the x, what is the variable, or what is the coefficient? It's 1. There's just one x squared sitting there, so we leave an implied 1. So we're going to say that a, this guy down here, I think, a, that isn't it, is 1. I know where the yellow is. B is, what is it, negative 3. Negative 3, and then C, which is the white one, right? White. C is equal to 1. Okay? And so we just plug it in. So we have negative 3, sorry about that, plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared plus 4 times times 1. And all of this is over 2 times 1. All right? And so if we start doing the math, we can break this down pretty quickly. Negative of a negative is a positive, so 3 plus or minus the square root. Let's talk about this. That's minus. It's minus. Sorry about writing that wrong. Negative 3 squared is 9. Minus 4 times 1 times 1 is 4 all over 2. Okay? And so we can put these together and we say our final answer is 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 all over 2. Or we can write them both out. It would be 3 plus root 5 over 2 or 3 minus root 5 over 2. But you're good to go. And that's it. Now, I'm going to move on. All right. Goodbye. Goodbye. What is the multiplicative inverse of negative 2 thirds? Multiplicative inverse, mult, inverse, is just the reciprocal, equals reciprocal. That's all it is. So the multiplicative inverse of negative 2 thirds, sign stays the same, 3 halves. Done. To evaluate, I'm not going to keep evaluating. All it means is plug in 6 for A and negative 4 for Y. Do the math inside the parentheses. So what you would have there is inside the parentheses, I'm going to cut this off as the next one. So all you would do is some math. 6 plus negative 4 or plus negative 4 or minus 4 squared plus 2 times negative 4. Right? And there it is. So, pardon me, pardon my nose, I'm getting a little stuffy. This is negative 8. And then, what do we got here? 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 8 equals negative 4. Okay? The same thing holds true with the next one. So I'm just going to plug in the value. 2 times, it's negative 2 times 9. And it's inside absolute value. So we get the absolute value of negative 18, which of course is just 18. That's 18 steps away from 0. I'm going to keep moving because I want to get done with this so that you guys have something to study at a reasonable hour. So I'm going to move to almost the end. I'm going to keep going through this. I want to show you one thing when you solve absolute value equations. And I'm going to show you that absolute value equation that is 8 times the absolute value x plus 3 equals 32. Listen, if you got something out there, yeah, you could distribute, but it's messed up. It's going to mess everything up. So divide both sides by 8 before you start. That gets rid of this guy out here. That becomes a 1. That becomes 4. Then you just have, just like the other ones, the absolute value of x plus 3 equals 4. Now remember, like I said in class, x plus 3 equals 4, and we have to solve for the negative value, right? So we say x plus 3 equals negative 4, okay? And when we do this, we solve the same way. We subtract 3, subtract 3, subtract 3, subtract 3, and that goes away, and that goes away, and x equals 1, and that goes away, and x equals -7. Okay, so there are your answers. Absolute value inequalities. So let me start getting rid of this. There we go. And here we go, absolute value inequality. So we have the absolute value of 2x minus 6 is less than or equal to 12. Okay? The only thing that's different is this guy right here. Right? You solve it the same way. You solve for both the positive and negative values. So you solve 2x minus 6 is less than or equal to 12. And then you say that 2x minus 6 is, I'll put the -12 here, but then I want to show you what happens. Here we go. Let's see if this shows up. Yep. We change this around. We flip it around because we're solving for the negative value. So when we solve these, we just do the same things we always do. We undo the addition first, or we undo the subtraction first with addition. That goes away, and we have an 18, so we leave this symbol alone. 2x is less than or equal to 18. We divide both sides by 2. That becomes a 1. Divide 18 by 2. That becomes a 9. So x is less than 9. Okay, we do the same thing here. We're going to add 6 to both sides. That goes away. We add 6. Okay, -12 and +6 is -6. Still with the greater than or equal to 2x. We divide by 2. That becomes a 1. Divide by 2. X is greater than or equal to -3. Now, we can write this as one compound inequality. What's the smallest thing we have? -3. Clown's mouth is open to the x, but x is less than 9. So that is an and connected compound inequality. You don't have to graph it. Identify the graph of the following. Here's our graph, right? Here's our graph. Here's our equation, our inequality. 9 is greater than 3 plus 2x. All right? We got to get rid of this 3. We're going to show the opposite of 3. That goes away. -3. 6 is greater than 2x. Divide both sides by 2. This becomes 1 lonely little x, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. All right, so this really says x is less than 3, right? Or 3 is greater than x. Right, so we want to show everything less than 3. So just look at this guy right here. If it's just less than, we're looking for a graph pointing less than. So where, if the clown's mouth is open to the x, then x is greater than that value. If it's just an arrow that's pointing to the x, that means it's less than. So less than points to the left, right? Well, what about, sorry, let me go back. So less than, we're going to rewrite this as x is less than 3 because it makes your brain feel better. Less than means the graph points to the left. Greater than would mean the graph points to the right. What about the circle at the end? Well, if it doesn't have an equal sign on it, it's open. If it looked like this, then my graph would have a closed circle and point left. Good? Let's move on. This one's not difficult at all. You're given 3 coordinate pairs. 0, 0. 1, 1. And what is it, 2, 1 or 2, 0? 2, 0. There are 2 things they ask about this. What's the domain of this set? The relation of these 3 terms. What's the domain? Well, the domain is all the x's. What are all the x's? Domain is 0, 1, and 2. Is this a function? I don't know. Do they repeat? Do any x's repeat? If the answer is no, then it's a function. If we had a repeated x, we would not have a function, but this represents a function. Next thing is just plug and chug. Whatever's inside the parentheses of like f of -6, if f of x is -4x minus 5, looks like this. F of -6 if f of x equals -4x plus 5. Right? All we do is rewrite this. F of -6 equals -4x. Well, it would be x, but I'm going to put in a -6 for x, and then add 5 to it. All right, and then I'm going to do the math, and that would be 24 plus 5, which would be 29. All right, linear functions, just put them into slope-intercept form, and you should be good to go. Standard form, I'll get to in one brief moment. I'm going to close the video because it's a pretty long one and then come back to you in 1 minute.